How far would you go for some updoots on the internet? How badly do you want to suckle from that juicy teat of internet clout? I've actually started quite a few videos with that exact same question. It seems that today the most important thing to people is the numbers on the screen. Bigger number, better person. Everyone's so desperate to squeeze as much milk as possible from those beautiful honkers of internet points, and no price is too high. We've seen some wacky, goofy shit recently for those internet points. You remember those dudes that went to jail for 3 years on TikTok because they were filming a stop the train prank where they just sit on the train tracks and hope the train stops in time before they get brutally fucking blasted by it? And then it actually did stop and they went to jail. We also recently saw that kid play the fake robbery prank on some strangers and he got shot and died for it. His last words were quite literally, "just a prank, bro." At least according to a few sources, that was an extremely sad one. So we've seen some crazy shit. People really will do anything for some internet fame. And today I want to talk about a pretty special case. It's someone that I'm sure you've heard of. I've talked about him before. A lot of people have. He's been a big name on YouTube for a while. His name's Nikado Avocado. If you're on Twitter, you've probably seen his asshole floating around pretty often. For some reason, it was a big trend in meme to just post Nikado Avocado's OnlyFans content all over Twitter. So I've seen his butthole more times than I've seen him doing his mukbangs. For those that don't know, Nikado Avocado is a mukbang YouTuber. It's primarily what he does. Mukbangs are when you just eat on camera, and that's about it. I'm not really here to get into the lore of Nikado Avocado. There's a ton of videos that do dive into it. I want to talk about what's going on recently with him. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and take my swampy ass out of here for a second and let Nikado Avocado kind of take it away. This is from his most recent video. This is kind of what his content has become.
I wouldn't have become disabled if it weren't for you people who encouraged these videos. This is the $6, this is the $10. Ouch! My ribs! How many months are we gonna have to endure this pain? Alright, let's go for this. Ooh. This definitely looks cheesier. This one. And I'm allergic to this one too. Oh. But sometimes in life you just want what you can't have. I'm not allowed to have garlic. Or lots of onions. Or durian.
Now, to anyone that's familiar with this creator, you'll probably think that this is nothing special. This just looks like every other video he's ever made, just with less crying. You've probably even seen Nikado Avocado around other parts of the internet. If you don't even know who he is, you've probably seen some of his clips. He usually will eat something and then just start breaking down into tears and crying about something. He's notorious for constantly crying. So then why did I decide this video and these clips to show you? Well, as you can tell from the title of that video, he now claims to be a disabled person, which I'll get into in a minute, but I want to focus on what he said at the beginning, outside of making some of the most revolting noises I've heard in quite some time while undergoing some kind of exorcism. He said, "It's your fault for encouraging these videos." Now, he says shit like this pretty often, and it shows me that there's still some self-awareness deep within him somewhere, locked deep away. But that rational side of him he keeps buried, locked in a cage, and still does this content, even knowing better. Even knowing that it's a complete detriment to his overall health and well-being. He continues to do it while still having that small glimmer of self-awareness. He says it's your fault for encouraging it, and he's absolutely right. Nikado Avocado didn't start as this kind of channel. Even 4 years ago, 2017, so 4 years ago now, he was a very healthy person. He seemed to be pretty mentally, sound. He wasn't breaking down on camera all the time and going wild and crazy from what I remember. He was even extremely good at an instrument. I think it was the violin, if I remember correctly. He was a vegan. He was just preaching some really positive stuff. But then he started to notice that the videos that gained a lot of traction were videos where he was just fucking gluttonous and eating 1,000,000 calories per sitting. So he stuck with it. And now he has a couple of channels where he does this pretty much every day, and it's been like this for the last 4 or so years. This is what he used to look like in 2017, and then when the videos really started to gain traction, he gained over 200 pounds in the last couple of years. And it's absolutely true. It's the audience's fault for this. They created what Nikado Avocado has become. Obviously, it's not all their fault. He is making the conscious decisions to completely throw away his health and well-being, which has now led to his disability, which he claims to have. Again, Nikado Avocado is not the most reliable narrator. He makes a lot of shit up sometimes. So whether or not he actually now has a disability, it's anyone's guess. He claims to have 3 broken ribs, which is attributed to his incredible weight gain. Incredible being the wrong word, really just astonishingly upsetting weight gain that he's been putting on recently. He claims that the weight of his body has now broken a few of his ribs, which now has him bedridden. I think he also claimed to now have to have a full-time nurse in order for him to just engage in day-to-day activities. And he also has been diagnosed with sleep apnea, I believe, which is why you'll see on his most recent thumbnails, he has like that machine hooked up to his nose that makes him look like some kind of like cyborg from the future or something. It seems to really be going downhill quickly for him. People have been saying for the last couple of years that Nikado Avocado is literally killing himself for YouTube views, and it's absolutely true. He is slowly killing himself and documenting the journey the entire time while having an understanding of exactly what he's doing. He's well aware that he is throwing away his health, his well-being, his happiness, for the sake of some YouTube views because his audience continues to eat it up, much like he eats up a million fucking cheeseburgers every couple of days. For almost the last 4 years, almost every day, he has done mukbangs like this, where he's eating 6 pizzas, 8 pizzas. He'll get like fucking McDonald's and he'll order everything off the menu and then ask if they can just tilt the grill over to get a little extra grease in a cup for him to drink on camera. It has been an extremely sad thing to see. He's also been saying for a little while now that he's going to be losing some weight. His weight loss journey has begun, but what ends up happening is for every pound he loses, he gains 10 more. I didn't play much of the video here, but he even mentioned that. He even goes on to say after the "your fault" speech that he started his weight loss and he lost a pound but then gained 3 more because he wanted to please his audience with more videos or something like that. So it's just truly a pretty awful thing to see. As you probably noticed from the screenshot, the last 6 days he's posted a video each day talking about his disability and his new diet with it, and each one he has tons and tons of food from different places, and it's not clickbait. He really eats all of that food. Very rarely does he not finish his plate. He usually finishes it or gets very close to it. Almost nothing goes to waste. It goes right into Nikado Avocado's guts. And one thing you may have also noticed from that screenshot is his views are high, which is exactly why he does it. Yeah, most of them have more dislikes than likes, but even on the one I showed you, that's still like 4,000 likes, so there are 4,000 people dropping a fat like, leaving an encouraging comment, and he's usually peddling some merch, so the shirts you see him wear, he immediately pins in a comment for you to buy them, and I imagine he sells quite a few shirts. Even the people that get in there just to dislike or just tune in to watch the train wreck, that's more views for him, that's more engagement, that helps him, and that keeps him on this wagon, keeps him going. So overall, it's just a really shitty cycle. And I tune in occasionally just to see if Nikado Avocado is making any strides in helping himself, because it seems like he really wants to sometimes, and then he goes right back into going to Chick-fil-A to literally eat fucking food off the floor like David Hasselhoff. Like, it's just really sad. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. He doesn't usually visit the restaurants. He just orders it and then eats it from either his bed or his own like table that he sets up for it. When he is out in public, though, he's usually on one of the mobility scooters, and he gets a little crazy out there, because a lot of what his content has become is him making really gross noises and shaking his head around while trying his best to like shake his whole body around to really let you know that he's gained a lot of weight, which, I don't know, man. The whole thing is just weird and just sad. And that's all I wanted to talk about. This is just another one of those things where it's like, man, the links people go to for some internet fame, like, it's just upsetting to see. So, I mean, yeah, that's really about it. So, yeah. A couple months ago, one of the best journalists on the planet, who also happens to be a YouTuber, got his house firebombed due to his investigations into a large network of corruption in Australia. I really do mean those words earnestly. Journalism is in such a poor spot right now. Modern journalism has about as much respect as the bronies did during the early 2010s. You remember that community of adults that used to jerk off to My Little Pony? In fact, I would argue that people have more respect for them than a lot of journalists these days, and rightfully so. It's an industry that thrives off of just feeding shit into the mouths of everyone that happens to come across their headlines. They're either writing meaningless articles, not focusing on anything important, writing blatant lies about shit, or just generating their own controversies to farm rage bait clicks from people just to drive traffic to their site. I'm sure you're tired of me whining about this one example I'm about to use because I've used it like 20 fucking times now, but I just think it's perfect to encapsulate what I'm talking about. There is an article Kotaku published proudly where it was all about the author mishearing a lyric in a Super Smash Bros. Song and thinking they heard a slur, so they wrote a whole article attacking Nintendo for it and demanding an apology and a response. Like, that is just the perfect example for what I'm talking about. I'm already getting lost in the sauce talking about this again and ranting. The reason I'm even mentioning it is because Friendly Jordies does real, meaningful journalism. One of the very few in the field that does. He's a political commentator, a YouTuber, and a comedian, and he combines all of these into extremely hard-hitting investigations into corruption in the government, and he presents all of the information factually, with sources, with evidence, and delivers it in extremely entertaining ways. So it's palatable to anyone, even if you're not in Australia, it gets you educated and it entertains you. It is just the perfect blend of everything you could ever want from a journalist, really. And for all of his hard work, his life gets threatened. He is doing all of this at great personal risk to his own safety. His fucking house got firebombed, and the list of suspects that it could be is super long. He came back recently after a 2-month break on YouTube to update everyone on what's going on with that whole situation, and he laid out the entire timeline of events for all of the enemies he's made that could have been responsible for this firebomb attack on his house. This attempt on his life could have been made by a lot of very powerful people that Jordies has exposed and dropped very important information on over the years, and I highly, highly recommend watching his entire video going over all of it. Of course, the link is going to be in the description below. I'd like to briefly give you a summation of some of the possible suspects here in this little murder mystery whodunit. He compared this whole situation to Knives Out, and he's absolutely right. This is a wild web of fucking supervillains that are after him, potentially. He's got like the entire fucking Naruto Akatsuki hunting him down. And by far the biggest clown, but also the biggest, most powerful person in that group is John Barilaro, the former Deputy Premier of New South Wales, whom has come after Jordies many times and even cites Jordies as the reason he stepped down from his position, the most powerful position in New South Wales, because of their YouTube beef and Jordies' content insulting him and exposing him. John Barilaro has some very scary connections that could have been used here that led to this whole situation, and Friendly Jordies does highlight all of these possibilities. But of course, he's far from the only one. Jordies has exposed corruption at every level, so the list of enemies is longer than the terms of service to signing up to iTunes. But I would like to highlight 2 others. One of them is an extremely powerful gambling company that Jordies has talked about and dropped very important information regarding. And another one is an organized crime ring. I'm not going to go too in-depth on those 2 yet. I highly recommend you watch Jordies' video talking about why these are very possible suspects in this firebombing on his residence. But I would like to show you a few clips from the video, mainly ones that are poking fun at John Barilaro, going over the history between the two, and just kind of pointing and laughing at this absolute goober. But it is a very serious situation, and somehow Jordies has unbreakable, indomitable spirit and will. Because even though his life has been threatened, and keep in mind, that firebombing, it was twice. At first, they firebombed his neighbor thinking it was his house, but when they realized it wasn't his house, they came back and fucking firebombed him again. So, his life, very real danger, and he still is making the decision to stay and fight against corruption. There is nothing more admirable or brave. Like, he is exactly what journalists should aspire to be. And he still somehow delivers content that is so entertaining and so good. I don't know how he does it without just like chewing on his fucking fingernails in fear every day. Absolute goddamn Australian hero.
In what I now know was a premeditated attack that at best was intended to terrify me and at worst was intended to kill me.
I would say it was probably intended to kill you. Like, throwing a firebomb at the house and actually setting the house on fire is less of like an intimidation tactic and more of an attempted murder, I would say. But I feel like in his position, he's got to be very careful with the words he chooses because he's constantly in the crosshairs of every single authority in Australia because he exposes so much corruption. But yeah, this is very much a step above an intimidation tactic. An intimidation tactic is if you had like someone come to your house dressed as a construction worker, but then it was actually a lawyer serving you like a fucking lawsuit. That's an intimidation tactic. This is some like hitman shit.
The night that happened, I was supposed to be sleeping here. I didn't even have smoke alarms. So there's a very good chance that if I was, I could have ended up like the content you're watching right now. Fire. But I wasn't here because that week I was performing my live show in Melbourne and I forgot my keys while I was down there. So there, criminals outwitted. It reminds me of that quote.
He's
if
2 steps ahead.
Doing, then the enemy certainly can't anticipate our future actions. So I was sleeping somewhere else that night.
That's such a beautiful line too. That's always the cliche on how they beat like an overpowered villain in an anime or some shit who can see into the future. We'll have no plan and we'll wing it. Unpredictability is our best friend.
Here, and it is too big of a jump to go from beating a cameraman in public to firebombing a house.
That is a big jump, but you're also giving him a lot of credit here with beating a cameraman. This cameraman is fending off this overgrown baby with ease. Like, this is pretty sad for John Barilaro here. He is, it's like that, like an older brother putting their hand on the head of the younger brother as he's throwing punches that are missing. And he's holding like a 30-pound camera on his shoulder.
John Barilaro had this palatial multi-million-dollar estate that he Airbnb'd as a side hustle to his other gig, being the leader of a state. This is the dumbest thing you could do, right? Like, especially since the other half of the time, it's not Airbnb, that's where he lives. So we thought, wouldn't it be good if we film a video on the history of all the shitty things he's done, but film it at that Airbnb? Because as you've probably gathered, or haven't because you're that dumb, I'm filming at your estate. And I want you to be the first to know that I f***ed in both your guest houses. Oh, Stooge, we tracked the video. It's coming from inside the
I don't know if
house.
that's true or not, but that's such a fucking flex. This guy actually sounds unbelievably stupid. Like, legitimately, observably stupid. I am believing 100% that his feelings got hurt because Friendly Jordies made fun of him, and he probably cried. Like, he actually probably did cry and then resign. That's crazy. They came on his pillows. Yeah, maybe. I mean, again, I wasn't there to watch him have sex and pound cheeks at John Barilaro's Airbnb or anything. I'm just going to take his word for it. And even if he didn't, he planted the seed of doubt in his head forever now. The guy that makes fun of him also fucked in his beds. So either way, that's a W.
John was demanding the police conduct a bug sweep of the property. Something that would cost the taxpayers $10
And a blacklight,
despite
please.
the fact we
We need to know if he
almost
actually
that
fucked
much
here.
to stay at the property. Just imagine how stupid and entitled it is to be deputy premier and lease one of your primary residences out to anyone. I never considered doing this before, but say a property developer wants a favor, they could very easily get material to blackmail you.
Hey, I want to pop in here real quick once again to drive home the absolute insanity of this situation. John Barilaro, the most powerful man in New South Wales, was listing his actual primary estate as an Airbnb when he wasn't staying there. That is levels of stupid that not even Saints Row was able to tickle. John Barilaro has the brain of a child still struggling to fit a square into a square hole. I don't know what could have even led to him believing that was a decent idea at all. Like, maybe it's 30, 40 years of eating paint chips and boofing asbestos. Like, I don't know. Like, how he could have thought in his position that listing his actual residency as an Airbnb was smart. As Jordy's does list, there was a lot worse shit that could have come from this. Shit could have been planted in his estate that would have got him in huge legal trouble, blackmail, it could have been bugged. Like, there was so much that could have happened here because he lists it as a fucking Airbnb. Honestly, John's lucky Jordy's was the one to do this because it could have been so much worse. He got off easy by the only thing scandalous happening in his estate was Jordy's slamming ham in his bed. Like, he could have found himself in much, much, much bigger trouble.
In another video, I called Barilaro up and attempted to ask him about allegations surrounding him and extramarital affairs. Turns out, John's intimate relationships would eventually come under scrutiny in a hearing concerning his boss's intimate relationships, but that's a story for another day. I didn't know this at the time, but these videos caused John's office to contact the New South Wales Police Force just days after their release, specifically the Counter-Terrorism and Special Tactics Command.
God, what a flex. You grilled a man's cheeks so hard that he called in the Counter-Terrorism and Special Tactics Command. Fucking Jack Bauer had to be put on your case because you bullied this guy's feelings so hard. Jesus Christ. Now I think he fucked someone that's not his wife. Now, I mean, I know nothing about him or the case, but now because he called in fucking CTU, the Counterterrorism Unit, now I think he absolutely cheated on his wife. He went too hard to prove he didn't. Now I feel like he's covering something up. You see, you gotta, there's a fine line between, like, a proper response and an overkill. And when you reach overkill, you're basically already guilty. Oh no, John.
The defamation lawyers draft up this absolutely schizophrenic letter detailing all of John's grievances with the videos I made, including that I called him a greasy little scrotum. He needed to clear the record on that one. Let everyone know that's not true. Go by, and they were pretty quiet.
Seeing insults in writing on a legal document is crazy.
On behalf of a guy that we exposed and made fun of. Oh no. So we've been served. And what they gave us, in my honest opinion, is another whiny crock of shit. That was.
Does he actually have to? So he's been sued a million fucking times. Does he actually ever have to even defend himself, or does it get thrown out pretty quickly? Because this man has collected more lawsuits than I have Pokemon cards at this point, from the feelings he's hurt. Yeah, he's had to defend a few times. Okay. Because, like, I've seen the sheer number of them, and it is overwhelming. But I also know quite a few of them get thrown out. Like, even in the description of this one is being thrown out. So I was just wondering if he ever even had to actually go defend himself, or if they eventually just drop it.
Then on the 4th of June 2021, my producer Christo was walking back from uni.
Oh, I know this one.
Meeting our lawyer Mark that day, so he had the document.
Yeah, this was a big clip when it came out.
They're giving away evidence and trying to run away with it. Yeah?
What's happening? They're just fighting him.
Run off with evidence. Okay? Who are you doing this? You're out with... Jesus Christ. I'm coming.
Where is it? Film this. I am. Make sure you don't film it. This is bizarre.
This is not Australia.
Yeah, it's Mark Davis.
Christo was arrested by the Terror Police, specifically the Fixated Persons Unit, charged with 4 counts of stalking and intimidation. So we're now facing criminal charges and a defamation suit.
The guy looks like he get... Well, I mean, in defense of John Barilaro, he literally did kind of get cucked by extension. Because this fucking idiot put his personal residence up as an Airbnb, so friendly Geordies went and had sex there. Like, his estate got cucked. So of course he's going to be sad forever. I'll briefly give a little context here. Geordie's producer got arrested on completely bogus dog shit by the goddamn fucking counter-terrorist unit, like super soldiers meant to actually go after like terrorists and shit, all over fucking hurt feelings, and Geordie's and his team exposing corruption. It's an absolute affront to God. It is just downright wrong and fucked up what happened to Geordie's, his team, and everyone involved here. And that clip you saw is only a brief section of that whole arrest, which was brutal. Like, they roughed him up for no reason. Like, all of it is just foul.
They end up withdrawing the application and paying both Christo and my legal costs of over $20,000.
Hey,
but Christo's
attaboy.
criminal charges still hang over him, and my defo case is still ongoing. During this time, Barilaro also decided to publicly announce his intention to resign from politics, basically saying, I forced him to resign.
The defamation case definitely playing a big part of this.
God, that's so
I don't know how
good.
many of you can endure what I've endured on online. I feel for young men and women, young boys and girls that get bullied on social media. I feel for them because as a
Bro, you are literally the most powerful person in the region, and you're crying about YouTubers making fun of you so much that you're quitting your job. That is the weakest, softest shit of all time. Actual 14-year-olds get bullied harder than you do, and you know what they do? Continue on and move forward. You're the fucking most powerful politician in the region, and you curl up into the little fetal position suckling your thumb because a YouTuber called you a greasy scrotum. That is wild. That is fucking wild. Holy shit. You know what? I actually don't even think it's the mean words that Jordy says against him. I really think when Jordy's fucked at his house because this stupid idiot put his Airbnb or his actual home up for the Airbnb, I think that's what broke him. I think that, like, actually broke his whole soul. I think that was just, like, this big eureka moment where it's like, wow, I'm a fucking idiot. And he couldn't handle the realization. Like, the self-reflection was too much. Overwhelming.
So my legal team launches an
Holy
application
shit,
to
that's
strike out
Galaxy
that
Brain.
claim, opposed again by Barilaro, who fights tooth and nail to keep that claim in and keep his special protections that prevent his own words from being examined in court. And guess what? We lose. The judge rules that it would be more unfair to deprive Barilaro of the right to vindicate his reputation.
What? What is that
Than
stance?
to make it impossible
That's just
for me
blatant
to
corruption.
defend myself. So I'm basically stuck in
That needs to be highly scrutinized ASAP. That is so wild. Holy shit. Imagine still being bound by a 1700s ruling to protect a politician from saying something stupid in Parliament. He literally said he can defend himself, but not you. I know.
In late December of 2021, I released a video detailing that I had found an Ashley Madison account linked to John Barilaro's email address and personal details. You know the website that had the slogan,
That's so
"Life
good.
is short, have an affair." It was hacked a few years ago. I
Yes.
swear to God.
That was
as with
huge.
The rest of this saga, you couldn't make this up.
That I can't wait for the reveal, but I just have to once again chime on that. With that Ashley Madison hack, I don't know how many of you remember that. That caused like actual hysteria for maybe like a week. Like on Facebook, like the old gentlemen, they were breaking down like, how could this have happened? The internet is a secure place. My life is ruined. I can't believe it. Like absolutely having this nuclear meltdown because all of their shit was now exposed. It was amazing. It was fucking amazing. Ashley Madison was a place where married men went for cheating on their wife or something. That was the whole shtick. That was the whole basis of the site.
Him because when cameramen went to film him one night regarding this scandal, this happened.
I wonder if that was the woman he met on Ashley Madison or if it was his wife. There's really no telling. Oh, this is the cameraman.
It was a
Hey,
long
come on now.
and
Please. The cameraman wins this. John took the most damage. John was the one that hit the blast zone here. Cameraman's got 30 pounds of fucking iron on him. And he is still just manhandling John with one arm.
couldn't work for a while, so we're now using our legal fund to pay for a legal action against John Barilaro on behalf of the camera.
Let's go.
Just a quick
That's so
update.
good.
Days ago, John's charges were dropped
Oh.
on the grounds of mental health.
How? How is that an excuse? Wait, what? Does that work in Australia? So let's say assault and battery, whatever. Like you show evidence like, hey, this is really taking a toll on my mental health. Like I'm really stressed about this, and then be like, oh my god, we're so fucking sorry. Holy shit. Okay, we'll drop the case, please. Take all the time you need to recover from the mental burden of this whole ordeal. Oh my god, wow. Is that just like something you can actually do? Like obviously assault charges are going to be mentally draining, even to, well, especially to the super sensitive goofball Barolaro. But is that a real defense? Like, my mental health is suffering from this, please drop it. And they'll be like, oh, yes. Well, now that you've said that. It's like in Pirates of the Caribbean with Parlay. If you shout Parlay, they just have to stop everything. No, not a thing. He's just super corrupt. Okay, thank God. I'm happy to hear that. Well, I mean, I'm not happy to hear about the corruption, but I'm glad to hear this isn't like a real tactic you can employ.
Executive Director of large Sydney property development company Coronation Property Co. In August last year, we released an investigation into this developer, which detailed never before published links between them and one of the most violent crime organisations in all of Australian history, the Alameddine crime family, who are in no way suspects in the firebombing. No, not them. I'm sure they all have very credible alibis.
Wow, that's
we
terrifying.
Revealed that Andy DeHaas, the now former enough for Clubs New South Wales to bring a private prosecution against Troy and I. So now I've made even more enemies. The gambling lobby and anyone that would use them to launder money. And Clubs New South Wales rejected him. By the way, this came out on the same day John was saying in court that he was too mentally ill to face his assault charges, but well enough to run Clubs New South Wales, one of the most scrutinised jobs in the country right now.
Well, the thing is, like, assault charges are a scary thing. That's like a mental ewy. Like, that's yucky. Like, that doesn't make me feel good. But being in charge of a massive gambling company, that's a yippee kind of feeling. Like, that's two very different sides of, like, the mental spectrum here. So I can totally understand him not wanting to go to court to face the assault charges. That is very stressful. This is pleasure. This is fun. So I get it. I get it, John.
To have me thrown in jail, the 7th richest man in Australia threatening to sue me, numerous other property developers and dodgy bears. I have a longer enemies list than Richard Nixon, so despite having my suspicions, I'm still not completely sure as to who done it. But enough of listing enemies, it's now time for my friends list. First of all, sorry to my neighbours and landlord, and future apology to whoever finds my corpse. It's going to be messy. I'm not going down without a fight. Big thank you, boy.
That's like actually fucking terrifying. Like, he's making light of it, but the enemies that he has listed here are actually fucking horrifying. Like, I can't believe he's still staying in Australia, honestly. I really can't. So, for those that don't remember the situation, I'll quickly let you know. His house got firebombed, but it was actually the second attempt. So they initially firebombed his fucking neighbors, thinking it was his house. And then when they realized it wasn't his house that they fucking firebombed, they came back to try and finish the job. And like he mentioned, the house didn't even have smoke alarms, so like he literally probably would have just died if he was actually home at the time. Because it would have been when he was asleep. And the enemies he's listed here and their connections are very serious. I don't know how he's sitting here and being like okay about it and lucid. What a man's man. The problem as well is people who hear real journalism but don't like the message and reject it. See, like, I don't really subscribe to that belief, because if you look at some of, like, the real journalists that do great work like Jordy's, they are very well received by actual people, not politicians and not the elite. Like, that's how you know it's the sign of, like, good journalism. I never really see pushback when you're met with, like, a real journalist. Join me on a little adventure for a moment, because I'd like to talk about dreams. Not as, like, a psychologist or anything. I'm not about to hold up Rorschachs and ask you what you see in the ink blots and try and tie it to, like, some trauma from when your high school bully put your head in the toilet and flushed it. I want to talk about dream jobs specifically. Because 20 years ago, if you asked a child what their dream job is, you'd probably get some silly things like a professional ice cream tester, getting paid to try different ice cream flavors. But now, if you ask pretty much any kid in the world what their dream job is, all of them will probably give you the same answer. YouTuber. Or more broadly, online content creator, so streamer, YouTuber, things like that. And it's a dream job for more than just children, obviously. There are people of all ages that very much want some kind of online presence as a career. And it's just become a very sought-after occupation. There are more people hunting after an online career than there were assassins hunting after John Wick. And the reason I mention this is because there's recently been a rise in the frequency of large content creators expressing burnout, as well as just being completely miserable by the content creation grind, needing to take long breaks, or just outright announcing that they're quitting altogether. In fact, that's what we're talking about today. That's the subject that I want to go over because Tfue just made a very heartfelt video saying goodbye to his audience, talking about how all the decade-plus long grind he's been embarked on has kind of made him feel like his life is slipped away from him. He doesn't regret any of his choices, but he recognized that he spent the majority of his life just behind a computer screen and wants to really finally feel free to live the life that he feels will be the happiest for him. So he made this video, which is kind of like the ending credits to like a franchise finale, where it just goes over the, best of moments throughout his life online. And he says that he's kind of just hanging up his hat. He's retiring the jersey number. He's stepping away from streaming and making content. If he doesn't know how long, he says he'll likely be back at some point, but it won't be for a long time. Again, if he ever does come back at all. And this isn't the first big content creator to say something like this, and just within the last week. PewDiePie also recently made an announcement about how he finally feels free from the content grind now that he lives in Japan, he's got his baby. Like, there are a lot of examples of this over the last year alone of huge content creators that are just kind of ready to move on from making content online. And I wanted to go over why. Because again, this is a dream job for so many people. And this is something I've always said, and I'll once again scream it from the mountaintops here. Being a YouTuber or a streamer is the luckiest position you can ever have. And in most cases is legitimately easier than 9-to-5 jobs outside of the internet or other positions that exist outside of the internet. When you are an online creator, for the most part, you get to choose your own hours. It's very flexible on what content you're making or what you really want your online footprint to be. You are in control for the most part, which is a luxury most people, 99% of people in the world, don't get to experience. So how could there even come a time where someone's just like really tired of it or made miserable by it? And I kind of just want to look at that. Because it's not like these creators are geriatric now. It's not like they spent 40 years in the industry and they're just finally ready to just say, kapui, I'm done here. Like, these are still young people. Tfue's 25 years old. He has been online for over a decade, though. PewDiePie is in his early 30s, and he's been online for over a decade as well. So they have been in the industries for, pretty much since the infancy of this whole space. But they're not, like, super old. So how does it get to the point where they're just really that done with it at such a young age? That's what I kind of want to explore here. So, in Tfue's video, it's a very honest and open look at what his content creation journey felt like, where he was streaming all the time, making videos all the time, and he felt trapped by it. Now, he does mention something that many people aren't going to sympathize too hard with, and I understand why. He mentions that having to stream 6 to 8 hours a day every day was brutal and draining. And a lot of people will recognize that that's kind of just normal 9-to-5 job hours. Like, that's less than 9-to-5 job hours, and most people don't have a job that they love, or a job that's fun, like playing video games, and they're certainly not making millions of dollars playing video games for the 6 to 8 hour period, right? So it's something that a lot of people kind of roll their eyes at, and I do get it. Because, again, it is a dream position. However, it doesn't, nullify his feelings on it, being forced to play basically 1 or 2 games, or basically just one type of game forever, otherwise viewers drop off, being forced to never really take a break because then you lose so many subs. Like, it is still a draining thing for sure, in a different way. You kind of become a prisoner of consistency, or else you risk taking a big hit to your income for the month. So it is a mentally damaging thing to feel forced to do shit you don't want to do for a long period of time, which I'm sure a lot of people in the normal working world can also relate to. Let me give you a quick example. I stream daily, and I've streamed daily for the last 6 or so years. However, 2 months ago, I had to take 4 days off. Well, it's not like I had to take it. It wasn't like a fucking government mandated vacation or anything. I usually will only take like maybe 1 day a month if something came up and it was too late to stream. So very rarely will you see me not online for 4 days in a row. That's apocalyptic vacation time for Charles there. That's that shit where the audience got concerned and like, damn, we might need a search and rescue team. Like, Charles might be in trouble here. This could be a message, a deeper message. So I had 4 days where I didn't stream in a row because a lot had came up and I just really wasn't able to. And when I did come back, I lost 8,000 subscribers. 8,000 subscribers out of the I think it was 26,000 subs I had at the time, just vanished in an instant because I took 4 days off from streaming. And I still haven't gotten them back. It's not like they all just came back once I was online again. Now, this isn't some complaint or pity party here because I recognize how unbelievably lucky I am to be in the position that I am. I am one of the luckiest people in the world to be able to do what I do. So this happening wasn't like some kind of shock or something that made me upset or anything like that. This was something I absolutely knew was coming after 4 days off because I'd seen it happen to so many other large creators. This was one of the main motivators behind Ludwig's subathon, if I remember correctly. He took like a week-long vacation and lost like 10,000 subs and kind of panicked to try and get them back and did the subathon. I remember Tyler1 made a quick statement on stream after a short time off where he's like, man, I lost 15,000 subscribers. And this is just something that happens if you're not there every single night, basically, on streaming. Since the online audience is always frothing at the mouth for content, they'll find other streamers elsewhere to fill that void because it's such a competitive space. Maybe they come back, maybe they don't. And maybe they do come back, but they don't have a Twitch Prime, right? Like, there's just so many things at play that do ultimately have a big impact on the person's income when they're a streamer, which is why you very rarely see streamers take a long vacation, or even if they do take a vacation, they still stream during it. Because it's kind of scary not to, because even just taking 1 day off can result in a drastic decline overnight, basically. So for Tfue to talk about this, like, I understand the perspective where if he wasn't streaming every single day, and I know he had a Twitch contract, so he also had minimum hour guaranteed that he had to hit, which I imagine was probably like 160 or maybe 180 hours would be my guess, but I'm just speculating. If he's not doing that every single day, it's hard to make up those hours, and it's also hard to hold on to his audience and that subscriber base. So it could absolutely be a really mentally shitty thing to go through. So I understand why that would be frustrating and make him feel like, you know, he can't really set aside time to do other things that he wants to do outside of streaming. And in the video, he said something that I think is a really interesting look at how the perspective shifts once someone reaches that level and is kind of trapped doing the same stuff. He said that in the beginning, gaming was an escape from reality, but now reality is an escape from gaming for him, because it's now just become something that he is completely obligated to do and isn't finding enough joy in anymore to make it feel like he's spending his time in a good way that makes him happy. Now, he's in a very fortunate position where he has generational wealth. He has oodles of clams, millions upon millions of dollars that he can use to live his life to the absolute fullest and do the most thrilling shit imaginable if he chooses to off the internet. And I think he recognizes how lucky he is, because there's countless people that would love to just leave their 9 to 5 to be able to explore what makes them happiest. And that's fundamentally what Tfue's doing. He's just in a fortunate, lucky position that he is financially secure enough to just step away from his job, his career. And this video is just letting his audience know, like, guys, I really appreciate the support, but it's time to move on to the next chapter of my life, which I think is a totally respectable thing. Now, this is a question I get asked a lot, and especially more recently because of so many YouTubers doing things like Tfue is, making these announcements about very long breaks or all this burnout that they're experiencing, or just outright calling it quits. I've been getting asked if there's ever a period that I plan on stopping, making videos or streaming. Because I've been making shit online since 2007, so it's been a good 16 years here. I actually started in 2006, but I've told all those stories quite a bit. I'm not just gonna give you the lore dump yet again. But, I'm starting to get a little gray in the face here. So is there ever a time where I just plan on calling it quits? And my answer is always a resounding no. Me making shit online is what makes me happiest. I have always been doing this shit because I have fun doing it. It's never been like an obligation for me or something I feel forced to do. I've just always done it purely for the love of it. So I couldn't imagine a time where I just hate it and like get made miserable by it and need to step away or something like that. But I always understand people who do. And I think one of the main contributing factors to that I've discussed a lot is when a creator gets kind of pigeonholed into one type of content and they feel like they can't branch out from it, it leads to them getting really made miserable by it, feeling forced to keep doing one thing forever. No one wants to do the same song and dance a million times. Eventually they want to try other things, but online, taking that step to try other things is extremely scary because it comes with a really real risk of losing a lot of your audience or making things that they won't enjoy or, just driving people away. And that's your entire career. That's your livelihood. You can't really take chances like that for a lot of creators. So it's always a very difficult thing to do, but I think it's the most rewarding thing as well. Because there's very few people that will be content making the exact same thing that they've been making for a decade. It takes a very strong mental to keep doing the same shit forever without wanting to try other things. But again, for a lot of creators, they feel like they need to, and I think that's what really leads to a lot of that burnout and that feeling of needing to take breaks, because the endless grind monotony of just doing it all day after day, this fucking same stale routine, gets to be draining. So I really think that a lot of the big contributing factors that make other creators burn out, I don't really have myself, because I do such an incredibly large variety of content and so much different shit. Like, literally, we just started a wrestling league, our own wrestling promotion a few months ago that we're going so hog wild with. Like, we're constantly doing new things. I'm constantly trying different types of content, doing all kinds of wild shit. So I just never really experienced that. Now, of course, I can't speak for like 40 years in the future here, but I just don't really envision a time where I'm going to stop having fun making things. So right now, I don't foresee a future where I just call it quits on creating content or anything like that. But again, with all of these other creators that are talking about this, I really do get it from their perspective on how it gets to that point, even with a job like YouTubing or streaming, a dream job. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to go over this whole topic here. I'm wishing Tfue the absolute best, and I hope whatever he decides to do now post content creation is something that makes him extremely happy. He deserves it. Everyone deserves to pursue what makes them happiest, and Tfue's in a lucky position that he gets to do that. So wishing him the best, and anyone else that's recently announced breaks or calling it quits on content creation, I hope whatever they choose to do next is something that makes them feel very happy. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. That's about it. So yeah. 2024 is off to an interesting start that I don't think anyone saw coming. Not even the Mayan calendar could have popped this puppy on there. This is a really kind of somber way to begin the year when it comes to online content creation, because another massive YouTuber just announced their departure from their current content. There are more YouTubers leaving the platform than there are people leaving an open mic James Corden stand-up routine. For some reason, it seems like a lot of major channels are having this mass exodus here. Well, I'm exaggerating a bit because right now it's just 2 YouTubers in a week, but they are like actual pillars of the YouTube community. Last week, it was Tom Scott posting his announcement letting his audience know that the content that he's created for the last 10 years is kaput. He's closing that chapter of his life and moving on and exploring other areas of his life that he's neglected over the last 10 years of going nuts to butts on the grind for content creation and taking an indefinite break. And now another massive YouTuber is also sailing off into the sunset, MatPat.
It's not clickbait. On March 9th, I will be hosting my last Theory episode, at which point I'll be handing off the channels to someone else.
March 9th will be a dark day in YouTube history for sure. It'll probably be a day more sad than June 6, 2006, the date of the Falador massacre in RuneScape. God rest all the poor souls that lost their lives that day. That was a video that hit YouTube, actually how I found the platform, and for some reason that's a date that lives in my head as a sad day in YouTube history, and now March 8th of 2024 will also be there as well. MatPat has built something incredible. MatPat and his team have had an influence on the platform that I don't see ever disappearing. They have truly left their mark on the actual culture of YouTube. Not just through The Game Theorist, it's a lot more than that. They have multiple other channels that they have successfully grown, like Style Theorist and all of that. But more so than just extremely popular channels, they've integrated their brand into content that is completely separate from their own. For example, I myself will often reference his catchphrase, "That's just a theory," or, "Well, that's just my game theory on it." And I'm not alone. In fact, in his video here, he does show a short little montage of other channels making that same reference. He was able, and his team, were able to actually take their content and evolve it in a way that blossomed outside of their own ecosystem. That's not something that you can artificially manufacture and brute force. That's just organic love for your work. I feel as though the majority of the YouTube community has always had an appreciation for the work that goes into the high quality productions that MatPat and his team have produced over the years. So even if you're someone like me, who's not the biggest Five Nights at Freddy's enthusiast, I know, get all your booze out of the way, throw your tomatoes, shoot your spitballs, I get it. I'm not the biggest Five Nights at Freddy's fan. I fucking said it, I know, I'm an uncultured troglodyte, is what it is. But even me, being the dumb Cro-Magnon that I am, have a deep appreciation for their content.
A little bit more disorganized than usual. Normally I would want to script out something like this pretty precisely. But with an announcement like this, I wanted to bring it back to just us. There's no one else in the room, there's no teleprompters, there's no nothing. It's just the way that this whole thing started. It's a conversation between us.
It's a very emotionally charged video, as you would expect it to be. This is his life's work, pretty much, and he's making the extremely difficult decision to step away from it. And his reasons are very similar to the reasons Tom Scott expressed, but I'll let him tell those in just a moment. I want to just mention here that the way he presents this, I also found to just be super genuine and heartfelt. Watching this reminded me of when Steve from Blue's Clues stepped away from being the host. He gave that, like, farewell speech. It was so heartwarming. It was about him going off to college and passing the torch. And I really got the same vibe from MatPat's video here as the Steve departure. And I just had to point that out. And I'd also like to mention that it is more than Tom Scott and MatPat that are leaving. Seth Everman also announced that he is done with content creation. He did let his audience know that there was a set time. Like, he had a timer counting down. He had the doomsday clock ticking down, and that bitch ran out. And he said, you know what? This wasn't a meme. This wasn't a joke. I really am stepping away. So he did a goodbye stream, and that'll be the last piece of YouTube content that he puts out there. There's just been a sizable chunk of huge channels that I feel a lot of you may have even grown up watching that are all announcing that they're leaving, all in a relatively short period of time. So this has led to a lot of speculation and questions as to, well, what's changed? What's going on? Why is everyone leaving all of a sudden? Is there something conspiratorial going on? Do we need the tinfoil hat out? Like, what the fuck is happening? And I'll get to why I think this is becoming so prevalent in a moment, but first I want to let MatPat explain why he personally is deciding to step away.
We knew that we couldn't do this forever. We knew that, honestly, we didn't want to do this forever. For as much as I love you, and I love overthinking things, and I love theorizing, I don't love late nights. I don't love the fact that Steph and I have been work first for over a decade when I was his age. He also probably knows the FNAF lore better than I do, which is a problem that I should probably address at some point. But honestly, I want to be able to spend more time with him.
Pretty reasonable explanation that every other creator has also shared the sentiment of. Spending over a decade with this breakneck pace to keep creating and keep pushing new content and bigger, better content, it's left him in a state where he's ready to maybe not do that anymore. And he's in a fortunate position where he doesn't have to. He can take a step back and start to get some extra hours of sleep every night. And the other big reason is just wanting to be able to spend more time with his family, in particular his kids. Like, it's pretty clear that MatPat is very passionate about what he's built here. And it's not an easy thing to step away from the role he's had for the last 13 years, but he really wants to be more active in his family's life, as well as maybe do more aside from just constantly think about work. And again, as Tom Scott said in his video, it's the dream job to be able to create content like MatPat, like Tom Scott, like Seth Everman, but at the end of the day, it is still a job, and it is something that has consumed their life, their time, and they want to get that time back so they can start doing other things and put their focus on other projects and other places. And to reuse Tom Scott's words here, he can do less and be happier, and that's the choice that he's making. He also does say that he wanted to do this while still at the top of his game. He didn't want his channel to kind of like dwindle and peter out like a sad little wet fart into the wind or anything. And the Theorist brand is on fire right now. So he wanted to go out with a really positive legacy while still at the very peak and take a more passive role. Now, he's not completely disappearing and vanishing from the internet or content in general, but he's not going to be the host or anything like that. He's going to be working more behind the scenes as well as making IP. So it's not like it's the last you're ever going to see of him. MatPat will return, just not in the same capacity that you're used to seeing him, which is not an easy thing to do. Again, it's a very tough thing to step away from. Now, why do I think so many YouTubers are all experiencing the same thing and making the same decision to just slow down or step away? Well, I don't think it's anything nefarious. I don't believe the Illuminati puppet strings are at play here. I think the reason is because YouTube has entered this stage of its life cycle where it's actually been around for so long that some people like MatPat, like Tom Scott, have been on here and dedicated a sizable chunk of their life to this career that they've made on it. Again, it is a job, and much like any other job, there reaches a point where they're just ready to do something else and retire from it. They're just lucky enough that they can retire in a shorter time frame than most people get to. Like everyone mentioned, it is a dream job, but after spending 10 years plus grinding, being exhausted, or maybe even burnt out, they decide that it's just not what they want to do anymore, and they do have the luxury of being able to step away from it without needing to worry about like providing for their family or their family's livelihood going forward or anything like that. So they do make that decision. Now, naturally, with all of this going on, people are starting to wonder, well, who's going to be the next one to announce that they're going to stop uploading or change things around to upload less, what have you. And on stream tonight, a ton of people were asking if I was next, like some kind of Super Smash Bros. DLC character. Am I going to be the next one to make an announcement like Tom Scott and like MatPat? I've been on YouTube for 17 years now, and let me just tell you, I only want to go harder. I fucking love it. The main thing for me, and I've said this since the time that I was literally a kid, is that I never want YouTube to feel like a job, and it never has. And I'll never let it feel like a job. It's just me having fun. It's me sitting here shooting the shit most of the time or exploring really goofy creative projects like God Slap. Wow, I got really disoriented with the camera. Our comic series, and then Plague Seeker, and then music. Man, it's like, what am I doing with my hand? It's like playing fucking Surgeon Simulator. Point is, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's the most fun I have in life. So, no, I don't have any plans of slowing down or anything like that. Actually have some huge plans for 2024, going even more hog wild. So let me put that to bed right now. I don't plan on having an announcement like this anytime soon, but I do 100% understand and respect all of these YouTubers that are making this decision, because it's not an easy one, especially for the amount of time they've spent building the incredible things they have built. And I wish MatPat and his whole team nothing but the absolute best going forward. But yeah, anyway, that's really about it. So yeah. It's no secret that journalism isn't as respected as it once was. It certainly doesn't have the pedigree that it used to. Most people find journalist to be synonymous with clown, and it's really not hard to see why in a lot of cases, when even today you have major publications like the Wall Street Journal in particular, who I'm going to name and shame real quick, who are writing goofy dogshit articles that are just blatantly wrong and misleading about Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried was the head of FTX, the cryptocurrency empire with billions upon billions of dollars in it that collapsed overnight and is a blatant case of fraud. But for some reason, Wall Street Journal and other publications, but Wall Street Journal in particular, has been playing this game of hide Sam's cock in their mouth, and they've been writing articles like refusing to admit that it was fraud and making all kinds of weird excuses for it, like, oh, the reason FTX failed was actually because supporters lost confidence in Sam Bankman-Fried, or Sam Bankman-Fried was the world's most generous billionaire who had plans to save the world and now he can't since his empire collapsed, playing the world's smallest violin for a fucking criminal, a fraud. It's so weird, and it's things like that that give journalism as a whole a very negative reputation. I know I've already spent quite a bit of time talking about this, but it's just infuriating. Oh, no, he's not a fraud. It's because he was too nice and too smart. We didn't see the vision, so it's actually our fault. You know, Sam Bankman-Fried's a goddamn angel. It's fucking sickening. And it leads to this stigma around journalism. But there are great journalists out there, and the one I want to talk about today is a journalist who is legitimately putting his life on the line in order to deliver extremely important stories to the public. And he's actually a YouTuber. His name is Friendly Jordies. He's a comedian who has, for the last couple of years, been very much delivering some of the hardest hitting journalism in all of Australia. And the price he's paid for this is a huge one. He's been threatened more times than Bugs Bunny by Elmer Fudd. He is constantly getting threats from powerful people. He's been sued. Even very recently, he was involved in a defamation case that resulted in Google, YouTube having to pay $715,000 over this defamation case. He was labeled racist or an abusive for a series of videos he made talking about a person in power. He's done so many stories about corruption at even the highest level, and most recently, the scariest thing has happened to him. His life was put in jeopardy. His house was firebombed. He made a video going over the situation, but it's also been reported by so many Australian news outlets as well. The situation is as follows. His neighbor's house was firebombed on the 17th of November. It was luckily put out pretty quickly, and then shortly after that, his house was firebombed, and a lot of it was damaged, obviously. Now, this appears to be a deliberate attack. The fact that his neighbors got firebombed and then he did makes it seem like they originally went for him to begin with, but were too fucking stupid to figure out which one was his residence, so they gambled on a 50-50 and lost. Kind of like when you gamble on a fart and shit your pants, but then they came back and tried to finish the job. It's fucking terrifying stuff. I'm going to play you a bit of his interview with the media here when they were waiting for him outside of his house.
I would hope that the New South Wales strike force that is supposedly set up for fixated people and terrorists would be looking into this instead of a comedian and his team for 6 months straight at the whim of a previous premier that all of you defended for his last 10 years, and then when he came out, and even after all the New York stuff, you're still sitting there defending him now. I saw all of your articles today where you all wrote all of the same little narrative that you write every time. I would hope that you would put just as much attention on the fact that that happened as you have on trying to assassinate my character over the last year. Thanks for your time.
Did something happen here a week ago, Jordan?
Now, his real name is Jordan, and even in the face of his life being threatened, he still rolls up calm and collected like Kratos, keeping his slapping hand primed and ready for these media cheeks. And it's not like his anger is misplaced. He has had very less than favorable articles written about him with a lot of labels attached to that, which I don't think are deserved when the entire purpose of Jordy's content recently has been exposing corruption at the highest level, which is an extremely important thing to be doing, where I feel he should be rewarded instead of vilified. But, you know, that's just me. I don't live in Australia here, but he has been treated very poorly by the people that are now standing outside of his home, showing no empathy at all. No sympathy at all, just trying to circle around like vultures on roadkill to get their scoop for their clicks, and he rightfully is upset at them and points out a bit of the hypocrisy surrounding it. I'd also like to add a bit of context surrounding Jordy's statement about the fixated people and terrorists statement he made in that clip. Well, it's because one of his producers was arrested by the unit that's supposed to be monitoring and stopping, like, terrorists, I guess. It's the Fixated Persons Unit. His producer was arrested for stalking. What a remarkable joke. It would almost be laughable if it wasn't so goddamn scary. He was arrested for stalking and intimidating when doing their reporting on the person that they were talking about by the goddamn department that's supposed to be about, like, you know, threats, like terrorist threats. Like, holy shit. That is mind-blowing. So Jordy's really does have every right to, of course, be upset. And obviously, after his house being firebombed like this, it's a fucking terrifying situation. He does very deep reporting. He exposes a lot of corruption, and I feel like he's probably one of the hardest hitting journalists Australia has at the moment that I'm aware of. He's celebrated by a lot of Australians as well for all of his reporting, and now his life is in danger, and it's hard to say who's responsible for the attack. He mentions in the same clip that because he's been doing reporting on, a lot of corruption at a very high level, it's hard to say who actually may have carried out the attack.
Obviously, we've done some extremely dangerous reporting over the last year, I suppose, of a bunch of extremely powerful people and corporations. There is many people that would want to do that. I obviously can't say who I suspect it is, but I do have like a short list in my head of who I think would have done it.
What a fucking horrifying situation for anyone to be in, and yet somehow Jordy's maintains a very composed demeanor. He continues joking throughout the rest of the video, even joking about the situation, and somehow staying, like, calm and collected, which is fucking baffling. The man is just built different. He's got tungsten throughout his body. It's fucking wild. Now, it doesn't matter how you feel about political opinions or whatever. I think everyone should be able to agree that his house being firebombed is outrageous. That's a huge problem, and it should result in a very thorough investigation that leads to people being arrested for this act. I think everyone should agree with that. But yeah, I want to mention that Jordy's also does have a Patreon if you want to directly support his content beyond just watching the videos. I'll go ahead and link that in the description below. And yeah, I think this is just terrible that it happened, and hoping for his safety in the future, and hoping they catch whoever was responsible for the firebomb attack. That's about it. So yeah. Yesterday I learned about an extremely tragic and weird situation involving the mysterious death of a 26-year-old Brazilian YouTuber named Carlos Medeiros. On December 25th, he was reported missing. A big search ensued to try and find him, and eventually one of his childhood friends saw his body poking out through the dirt on a couple's property. Upon digging up the area, they found Carlos Medeiros' corpse. It was buried in a shallow grave on this couple's land. And when asked about why his body was buried there, they said that he had died during a night of cocaine-fueled sex and passed away during an orgasm while fucking the homeowner's sister. Must have been the biggest nut ever busted, because this one sent him to meet his maker, according to their story. Between the drugs and the sex, he had died in their home, and the couple said that they panicked, didn't know what to do, they were afraid to call an ambulance, so they came to the conclusion that it would be best to just bury his body in their yard, which is an unhinged thought process. But obviously, this is a little suspicious. This is one of those smells that smells smelly. It just doesn't make any sense. How could not one but two people, multiple sentient human beings, reach this awful idea? It makes them look extremely guilty if they're truly innocent of no foul play. Why would they think to bury this body instead of just calling authorities to report what happened? It doesn't add up, especially when you consider that they had previously lied about this whole situation. Initially, they said that Carlos Medeiros left their house, and they had no idea where he was, and they had even allegedly made a social media post saying that they've got to find Carlos Medeiros. Come on, let's all find Carlos Medeiros. We gotta get him back, knowing full well they had buried him in their property. So that just, there's something not right there. This is like a plotline out of LA Noire. So it's a really fucking wild story, and there's actually more to it that I went over on stream, so I'm going to play you those clips now. There was a YouTuber who was buried in a backyard. Oh, you're talking about the Brazilian YouTuber, right? Hold on, I'll pull that up in a second, because that was kind of crazy. Let me send a quick text. 26-year-old Brazilian YouTuber found in neighbor's backyard. It was Carlos Medeiros. The body of a 26-year-old Brazilian YouTuber has been found buried in the backyard of some of his neighbors. He was reported missing on Christmas Day after he failed to return home for dinner with friends who later said that he had left their home late at night. Madero's family searched hospitals and woods until Saturday. Someone saw a mound of dirt in the house of this couple he had visited for the holidays. They went in and saw my brother's t-shirt showing in the dirt. They called the police, who went there and found him buried. So, here's their defense. The couple who owned the home claimed that the influencer died while doing drugs and having sex with Caroline's sister. The couple's version is this. They buried him because they didn't know what to do with the body. That is the most dog shit defense I've ever heard. What do you mean you buried him because you didn't know what to do with the body? You just call the police. That's nobody's first instinct. To bury a body is such an incredible time commitment. Like, there's no way that was just impulsively done. It's not like, alright, just quickly throw him in this fucking, grave we made. This is absolutely seeming like they killed him and tried to hide the body. Poorly, in a shallow grave. Because of the drugs, assuming it wasn't murder. Yeah, well, I don't think they've ran a toxicology report or anything yet. I think it's still too new. But they're saying that he allegedly had an overdose while taking Caroline's sister to have sex in the bathroom. At the moment he was having an orgasm, he felt unwell and fell dead. Which I don't believe for a fucking second. Because, I would believe it if they didn't bury his goddamn body in their garden. Also, if that is how he died, what a crazy way of going out. That is a rock star's death right there. Man's out there fucking boofing meth, all kinds of shit. Making a cocktail of ketamine, all kinds of wild shit. Has sex and dies during an orgasm. What a way to go to Valhalla. Merry fucking Christmas, I guess. I guess so. But I don't believe that story. I really don't. If the report indicates that his death was accidental, the couple will be charged with concealing a corpse. If it is proven that he is murdered, the man and the woman will be charged with homicide. Simple enough. The Post reported that the couple turned themselves in to authorities on Sunday. Now an autopsy will determine the cause of death. However, police said that they found evidence of stab wounds. Strangulation, or gunshots on the body. I think they meant found no evidence. I think that's what they meant to say. Because that reads as though, this is an open and shut case of not being a drug-related death. There was gunshots on the body, but it turned out what actually killed him was the weed he smoked 2 hours earlier. Gunshots were circumstantial, not significant. Or is not a typo. I think this has to be a typo here. I'll go to another source. That really feels like a fucking typo. Yeah, let's go to this one. Oh, fuck, it's the Daily Mail. They probably just copy and pasted this article. This one's saying that they're claiming that he took cocaine and had a heart attack while fucking. And they said that they were afraid of calling an ambulance. This is where they found the body. This was the grave they dug for him, I guess. The couple had initially lied and said that Medeiros left their home after dinner before later confessing to a different story. This is baloney! What a load of fucking fish paste! He didn't die from cocaine and sex. I don't believe this for a second. Also, these ads are nuts. These ads are going fucking Insano style. Man. All this inundation with ads will put you in an early grave. Good God, what an eyesore. They also made a social media post asking the public for help finding Medeiros. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. There's no way, there is no sensible couple that would bury a body of someone that just died in their home while having sex with their sister. That's already wild. And there is no way that they would start lying about it and then making social media posts. There's some fishiness afoot. Civil Police Chief Louis Faria told G1 that the incident is being investigated as a homicide committed by an unknown perpetrator. Sounds about right. Okay, yeah, it was a typo. During the search for the firefighters, according to a police report, Medeiros' body did not display any signs of violence. The house was set on fire. What? The house was set on fire by neighbors, but no arrests have been made. What? What? Wait, what? What is happening in this story? It's like an episode of CSI that just keeps going. So their house got set on fire? Residents in the Brazilian town set fire to the home where the body of the influencer was found buried. Jeepers creepers, Jiminy Christmas! Mob justice. Yeah, that's what it seems like. It reminds me of the second Halloween movie, Evil Dies Tonight. And then they just torched it. Imagine the evidence destroyed in that fire, though. Yeah, it's not a very well thought out plan. Look down, they're only charged with concealing a corpse. Yeah, we already covered that. Well, they will be charged with concealing a corpse if it was accidental, or if it's ruled, like after the autopsy, that he died from a heart attack from cocaine. Then my brain just had one of those like record scratch moments where everything just went foggy. Right now, it's just looking at concealing a corpse. If it was accidental and his death was a heart attack from cocaine. But if it turns out they killed him, obviously they're going to be charged with murder. It'd be so much less suspicious if they didn't burn the fucking house. Well, no, the family didn't burn the house. The community did. Assuming that there was foul play afoot here. They hid the body and then lied. And then made a social media post like, where is he? We gotta find him. When he was in their backyard. They're lying about that too. Oh, interesting. So you're claiming that the couple burnt the house down to hide further evidence. It wasn't the community. Oh, an interesting theory. That seems like a really drastic step to take. When they could have just scrubbed it all with bleach. Yeah, but they did just bury a body in their backyard. Yeah, that is also pretty drastic. True, true. Happy New Year. I hope 2024 is already off to a wonderful start for each and every one of you, filled with smiles and laughs. And I believe it's my responsibility to give you something to frown about to kick this year off. And I guess frowning is the wrong word for it, because it's actually something very bittersweet. Tom Scott, one of the best and most beloved YouTubers on the platform, posted a video today stating that after a decade of weekly uploads, he's going to be taking a step back. It's not like a full-blown retirement because he still has other content that he will be putting out, but he won't be using his main channel the way he has been. And this is one of those moments where you hang his jersey in the rafters here on YouTube's Hall of Fame. He has really made history with his channel. And now he's reached the point in his life where he wants to wind it down and focus on his own happiness as opposed to constantly be thinking about work and producing the videos. And there's actually quite a bit I want to talk about on that subject, so let's go ahead and get into it.
This isn't the standard YouTuber burnout apology video, and it's not, oh, woe is me, I'm leaving forever. I'm going somewhere with this. Literally.
This is one of those super rare situations where an online content creator gracefully departs and moves on from the content that they've created for the last decade. Typically, in a situation like this, with a channel as successful as Tom's, it ends with some fucking septic tank explosion where it's this massive shitstorm of controversy and scandal that leads to their channel just being abandoned or the creator leaves. Usually it's just standard protocol for a channel of this size to end with some kind of big mess, some hoopla. But not in this case. Tom Scott sails into the sunset under his own terms here. As he states right away, this isn't a burnout apology video. He's not trying to be woe is me, as he says. He's not trying to make himself seem like some kind of victim of anything. He's not out here with some kind of douchey send-off where he's like, you know, for too long now I've been suffering from success. I've got way too much money in my pocket and it's making my legs sore lugging it around, so I gotta take a step back. It's nothing like that. He is extraordinarily grateful for the 10 years he spent on the platform making this content, and he's taking a well-deserved, well-earned break from it all.
But I never missed a week. Sometimes a video would be a day or two early or late for one reason or another, but to my own satisfaction, which is ultimately the only thing I'm counting, there's been a video a week for 10 years. I never broke the streak.
He reflects on his humble beginnings. He says he's been trying to put content on the internet since 1999 and was never really sure if it would ever catch on. And then with YouTube, it did, clearly, in a huge way. Tom Scott has become one of the most, I'd say, influential educational channels on the entire platform, and has been for a long time now. His content has always been extremely high quality, obviously extremely consistent, posting once a week without fail for an entire decade. What an incredible achievement. And this is not easy content that he's been producing by any means. It's not Weenie Hut Jr. shit. He's not just out here flicking boogers onto YouTube and calling it a day with just throwaway bloat content. He is thoroughly researching interesting topics, going to the location and showcasing some unforgettable moments. He has lived an incredible life over the last 10 years, and YouTube has just been lucky and blessed to have him. He has invited us onto his bosom to suckle, and man, how tasty it has been. But this is a well-deserved break that he is taking here. I'll go ahead and let him explain why he's doing this.
I can't keep this up. This is my dream job and I have a lot of fun doing it. I know I'm incredibly lucky, but a dream job is still a job, and it's a job that keeps getting bigger and more complicated, and I am so tired. There's nothing in my life right now except work. I could keep making bigger and better things, keep climbing the ladder, build a business, hire full-time employees, and end up as a manager. I could not do that. I could do less and be happier. So I'm taking a break.
I chopped it up a little bit here, but the message overall is a pretty clear one. Even though he has his dream job, it is still a job, and it's one that never ends. It's one that you have to constantly keep your foot on the gas. You can't start granny shifting. You gotta keep double clutching like you should, otherwise you might blow the welds off the fucking intake, as the great Dominic Toretto says. And Tom Scott has done this week after week after week for a decade, and understandably, he's tired. He's exhausted. He said he set out to do 10 years of that grind, and now that 10 years is up, and he's ready to take a breather from it all. He states that he had two options. One, going the traditional YouTuber businessman route, where he puts the suit on, he hires a bunch of miscellaneous teams to keep pouring gasoline on the fire, to keep that puppy burning and churning, to elevate the Tom Scott brand, and he'd end up as the manager. But he said that wasn't really an appealing option to him because he thinks he wouldn't like it, basically. So instead, he went with option 2, and in his words, do less and be happier. Which I think is a beautiful statement on it, because at the end of the day, what's more important than your own personal happiness? He has his dream job, but he is constantly thinking about work and only work. There's no way that that is a healthy or happy way for him to continue living the rest of his life. So now that he accomplished his initial goal of doing this for 10 years, he's ready to explore the next chapter of his life where he's not constantly in work mode like he has been. And I think that is perfectly understandable, it's admirable, and nobody deserves it more than Tom Scott.
Sometime, I don't know when or if I come back, but when I do, it won't be weekly, at least not in this format, not here. This probably isn't goodbye, like not forever. The podcast I host, Lateral, is still going out weekly. My newsletter's still going out. The Plus channel will probably return at some point. There'll likely be new technical difficulties episodes. But right now, I need to spend time with people I hold dear. I need there to be things in my life that are not work, and it's been years since that's been true.
Now, like I said, he hasn't fully wiped his ass with the cyberspace or anything. He hasn't fully washed his hands from it and vanished. He's still going to be making content in some capacity, like his podcast that he mentioned, as well as his newsletter. And he did even say that this channel, his main channel, will have more content on it potentially in the future. As he said, it's not goodbye forever, he doesn't think. It's just right now, after 10 years, he achieved his goal and he needs a break. He needs to focus on things that aren't this. He then concludes the video with a very sincere and heartfelt montage of some very special moments throughout his 10 years on YouTube. Now, I'd like to talk about this in a broader scale on YouTube as a whole, because Tom Scott's not the only channel of this size and this level of success we've seen kind of leave. And I'm only going to talk about the ones that did so on purpose, like they decided to, they weren't forced to. So I'm not going to be talking about like the scandalous ones that were put into an early grave. And I don't mean like they were assassinated. I don't mean like they stopped posting because they got fucking killed or something. Like, I meant more like Illuminati, the channel we recently talked about that completely collapsed and died because of a lot of horrible things that they were doing coming to light, and basically controversies sunk the entire channel. That's obviously not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about situations like this where a YouTuber decides enough is enough, I'm ready to move on. Throughout the years on YouTube, there have been a lot of big channels that have, for one reason or another, decided to depart from the platform. So Tom Scott is the most recent one, but there have been many channels, even as of the last year, that are deciding to step away, like Tfue. 6 months ago, he announced that he was going to be stepping away from the internet. He did come back over the last month, but he took a 6-month hiatus. An OG example is Ray William Johnson, the most subscribed channel on the platform at one point in time, and while he was at the top of his game, announced, you know what, enough is enough, I'm fucking outski. So he peeled out, scooted sideways, and he took a long time off of the platform. Though I think there was a lot more behind the scenes that led to that. I don't know if that was entirely his own personal decision. I think there was a lot of weird things going on there, but it is another example of a massive YouTuber stepping away. Ray William Johnson also did come back pretty recently too, but the point is, a lot of these channels all share a couple things in common. One thing you're always going to see, the sentiment shared across all these channels, is that even though they have the dream job, and all of them recognize that what they do online is legitimately a wet dream of a profession, it does still have a very taxing effect on their mental health. Because it's constant. It doesn't stop. When you're an online content creator, not only do you need to consistently be there, you have to consistently do more and be better and elevate. Otherwise, you fall behind because it's the most competitive field on the planet because everyone has access to it. So you're competing with every single human being with a fucking internet connection that even has like a webcam or their phone. So a lot of content creators get stuck in the cycle of this pressure to improve and grow and innovate, and over time it leads to them being miserable, and that leads to burnout, which I'm sure all of you have heard creators speak about time and time again. And I know that when YouTubers start talking on like the trials and tribulations of content creation, a lot of people will roll their eyes and get nauseous, because if you got lucky enough to have an internet career producing content, you have a lot of luxuries that aren't afforded to a normal, traditional job and someone working them. Most of the time you get to choose your own hours. You get to work on the projects you want to work on, and you don't have, you know, your fucking ass under someone else's thumb forcing you to do things you don't want to. So there are a lot more benefits to working an online career creating content than a traditional job. It is significantly different. But that doesn't mean that it's always easy. There are still some trials and tribulations that are there, and yes, are different than a traditional job, but it doesn't mean that it's all sunshine and rainbows. Someone like Tom Scott, producing this level of quality consistently every week for 10 years, clearly that is going to be the majority of his life. He doesn't have the time to spend doing other things that he'd want to do because he has to keep focusing on this. And eventually it reaches the point where it's no longer as much fun as it used to be, and you want to do other things feeling trapped or suffocated by this, and eventually you reach the decision like, hey, let's take a breather. But online, a breather is sometimes an outright death sentence to your online career, which again is another thing that makes creators very hesitant to take any level of break for their own mental health, because it could spell disaster for them. And that's not even being exaggeratory. I talked about this during the Tfue announcement of his break. Streamers have this in a very big way. The most important part about being a successful top-tier streamer is being live every day, 5 to 10 hours a day, basically. Just being alive, being there is the most important part. I mentioned this last time, but I went from a daily streamer streaming between like 3 and 6 hours a day to taking a couple of breaks because it got to be a bit much. I did that daily grind of streaming for 5 straight years, and I averaged about like 14 to 15,000 viewers, and I had around 26,000 subs. This year, I think it was April, I'm already getting foggy on the months, but I took 4 days off, and I still had around 26,000 subs. When I came back after a 4-day break, I had 18,000 subs, about. I lost 8,000 subs from being away for 4 days, and I never got that back. If you take breaks in this field, that audience will go somewhere else to get their fix. They'll go somewhere else to get that, you know, comfort streamer or comfort content, whatever. So it leads to people just trapping themselves into this never-ending grind, constantly just being there and trying to grow or do different things or innovate and whatever, and just never actually being happy anymore doing it. So it takes a lot of strength, a lot of courage to do what Tom Scott has done here, to recognize that it's time that he focuses on himself and his own mental well-being, and as he said, do less and be happier. So Nothing but the best wishes for Tom Scott going forward. And I just wanted to touch on the overall subject of big YouTubers or content creators eventually taking steps back or winding down or even just outright moving on from their platform and content they've created. Just wanted to go into it a little bit here. So yeah, that's really about it. See ya.